I recently reported the end of licenses for a Chinese TV station in the UK. I have now stumbled upon an example of reporting on the radio equivalent of this television station, which perfectly shows that this decision could actually be understood. Just listen to how the station mixes the Hong Kong situation with Scotland and the US to justify the actions of the Chinese government. So, what comes next is definitely not my opinion, but I really want to use it to show you once how that's working. During a joint discussion with members of the delegation from Hong Kong and Macau at the fourth session of the 13th National Committee of the Political Consultative Conference of the Chinese People on Saturday, the Chinese Deputy Prime Minister Han Zheng announced the implementation of the principle of Hong Kong's administration by patriots. The statement is to be understood in connection with the ongoing regular annual meeting of the National People's Congress of China, at which a proposal for a resolution to improve the electoral system in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region is being examined. In fact, the implementation of legal requirements to regulate and improve the electoral system and to prevent foreign forces from interfering in a country's electoral affairs falls within the scope of national sovereignty and is a practice in most countries, including in the West. For example, the US Federal Election Commission mandates that presidential candidates and candidates in federal, state, and local elections do not accept donations from non-EU citizens in order to prevent interferences by foreign political forces. The United States President, governors, MPs, and other public servants at all levels are required to take an oath of allegiance to the United States Constitution prior to taking office. In the United Kingdom, Parliament passed the Scotland Act in 1998, which details the timing and sequence of regional elections in Scotland, eligibility of members, allocation of parliamentary seats, and calling of elections. The decision of the National People's Congress to improve the electoral system in Hong Kong and to close the loopholes that would have allowed foreign forces to interfere in the Hong Kong elections, however, provoked a series of attacks and defamations by the United States, Britain, and other countries. This shows once again that there are double standards in Hong Kong issues, with the aim of creating confusion in Hong Kong, destabilizing it, and thus curbing China's development. At the 46th session of the UN Human Rights Council on Friday, the representative of Belarus made a joint declaration on behalf of a total of 70 countries in which they expressed their support for China's implementation of the one country, two systems principle in Hong Kong. The statement said Hong Kong had been released from an awkward situation following the implementation of the national security law and is gradually regaining stability. Diplomats from Belarus, Laos, and Pakistan also expressed their support in Geneva for the Chinese National People's Congress to exercise its constitutional powers to improve the electoral system in Hong Kong. Western forces opposing Hong Kong and trying to disrupt the Hong Kong situation should listen more to these voices of justice from the international community. And I'm sorry. And? Do you agree with that? I definitely don't. And sorry, I really thought I could get through that one without laughing. But naming Belarus as the shining beacon of democracy, only a Chinese radio station could make that one up. I would have expected that for North Korea, but China, seriously, you can do better. I'm sorry. But that's a really nice example of propaganda. Only this time, not from Brexiteers against the EU, as we usually see it here on these channels, but from China against the UK and the USA. So it works in different ways. But there's more serious topics as well. British ports say they are not ready for Brexit customs controls. Construction on Portsmouth's main cattle port has only just begun, while the Dover facility is just a muddy field. A number of UK ports are calling on the government to postpone the next wave of Brexit bureaucracy, stating that border control posts will not be ready for the July deadline, while inland customs construction is also lagging behind schedule. So it's not an emergency, they're just not doing their homework. With Brexit Minister Lord Frost reportedly considering reviewing plans for full customs controls on all imported goods, pressure is mounting on ministers to postpone their deadlines and take measures to reduce controls. Yeah, but they signed that they will introduce those controls. UK exports to the EU have been subject to controls since January 1st. However, the UK government has decided to postpone import controls only until this summer to give traders time to prepare. However, as of July 1st, ministers are expecting controls at more than 30 designated border inspection posts where goods, plants and animals arriving from the EU by sea, rail or air can be inspected. It is obvious that not all facilities will be ready. How much of it will be is still up for debate, said Richard Ballantyne, Executive Director of the British Ports Association, the BPA. Our frustration with the government is that they are not ready to communicate Plan B. In less than 4 months, construction has only just begun at ports such as Portsmouth, Purfleet on Thames, in Essex and Killingholme on the Humber. The National Farmers Union, the NFU, warns that livestock trade could stall as no Channel Port plans facilities to control income livestock. And the location of some inland border checkpoints, such as Holyhead on Anglesey and Southwest Wales to service the ports of Fishguard and Pembroke, has not even been disclosed, while the location in Kent is called Whitecliffs, where goods will arrive at Dover inspected, is still referred to as a muddy field. Work is underway on the checkpoint next to Portsmouth container docks, but it is far from finished. The 4,500 square meter property still resembles a parking lot and is half covered with cobblestone. An excavator prepares the ground before the building's foundations can be laid. The port's owner, Portsmouth City Council, says its contractors expect the facility to be built by mid-August, when it needs to be certified by the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs and Animal and Plant Health Agency, a process that may take a few more weeks. Port operators say the delay was due in part to complications in the government's funding process for these multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects. A taxpayer-funded $200 million port infrastructure fund was oversubscribed, prompting the government to cut grants for Portsmouth and 40 other successful applicants by 34%. Portsmouth applied for £32 million in funding but only received £17.1 million, leaving the public harbour with a significant shortage, which meant that plans for a live animal inspection post had to be cancelled. The port, which contributes £8 million annually to the UK economy, is a major entry point for racehorses into the UK. A total of 60,000 breeding animals, including pigs, sheep and cattle, enter and leave the UK via Portsmouth each year. With other channel ports unwilling to invest in the facilities, the NFU warns that the ranching business could stall. If we hadn't cut our funds, we could have accelerated the project, and I'm pretty confident we would have achieved it, said Mike Sellis, Director of Portsmouth International Port. Border checkpoints can look like industrial facilities or distribution warehouses from the outside. But the inside must be biosecure so that live animals, meat and plants can be inspected without the risk of contamination, and so that veterinarians are available to carry out the controls. They also need to have space for trucks to park, which makes their construction costly and complex. In places like Dover and Holyhead, where there's no checkpoint next to the terminal, the government has taken responsibility for building 10 internal border structures or is working with decentralized administrations in Wales and Scotland. Some of these facilities are far from complete and are unlikely to be ready for July. The ports have notified the ministers in writing to warn them. The Guardian is aware that government departments, including the Cabinet, Department of Transportation and DEFRA, have been warned of delays. Even if they are unwillingly to go beyond July or to say so publicly, they must have alternative plans, and ministers and officials will find out weekly what's happening, Ballantyne says. The British Ports Association urges the government to share their contingency plans. The Welsh government said an announcement was expected shortly for the 2 BCPs in Wales, but added that a consulting and planning process would precede construction. A government spokesman said he is making significant preparations to ensure ports are ready for border controls to be phased in, adding that he is working closely with ports that have received funding. Not everyone is that happy. Southampton, Plymouth, Hull and Immingham, operated by Associated British Ports, are expected to be ready on time. Given delays elsewhere, the government has several options on how to proceed. For example, controls are currently taking place at their destination, and this could continue. However, this is not seen as a permanent solution, as the UK border could remain open to fraud and smuggling. Port operators are concerned about what would happen if vehicles were only stopped in ports with ready facilities. It would be unfair from a competitive standpoint, said Ballantyne again. Freight forwarders and freight owners would seek the route of least resistance and use these routes. Such measures could distort trade flows or lead to overcrowding and delays in ports where customs offices have been set up. The context for this discussion is to ensure that supermarket shelves remain stocked and that the fresh food that the UK is relying on continues to reach those shelves, said Tim Reardon, Brexit leader in Port of Dover. The infrastructure is not flexible, so the process must be. And it's really interesting, but you heard the thing with the funding. No? And now a quick note on car insurance. What has changed in car trips to the UK now? If you want to travel to the UK by car from Germany, for example, despite Corona, you should take the so-called green card with you. Since the transitional rules for Brexit expired at the end of 2020, the British authorities have been able to request proof of insurance cover upon entry, explains Hans-Peter Luckhaupt, motor vehicle experts at R&V Insurances in Germany. This document, officially called the International Motor Insurance Card, is available free of charge from your motor insurance company. Luckhaupt advises that you also take a traffic legal protection policy if you don't already have one. And his reasoning for this is, if Germans are involved in an accident, their contact person is exclusively the British insurer. Then in many cases you need a British lawyer to support you. It can be time-consuming and expensive, especially when a lawsuit is necessary. Here too, Brexit has changed the situation. Because in principle, German drivers who are damaged abroad by a vehicle from another EU country can contact the German representative of the opposing liability insurer. This way you can make claims for damages faster and easier, explains Luckhaupt. Incidentally, nothing has changed in the event of an accident with a British vehicle in Germany. The support from the German Green Card office in Berlin continues to exist. So don't worry if you see British license plates around your car. So don't worry. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. Auf Wiedersehen.